You are listening to the Prosper Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, this is Greg McCollum with another edition of the Prosper Law Podcast. At Prosper Law, we help criminal defense lawyers learn how to reduce stress, grow revenue, make more money, and have more free time. Thank you for joining us. Today I have a special guest, Nalini Prasad. Nalini is a digital marketing expert. She currently works with a company called BluShark, and Nalini knows all things digital marketing for lawyers. She's been doing this for a number of years. I've known her for several years and always gained something from talking to her. Today I'm very happy to have her on the podcast. Nalini, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's, a lot of change right now in digital with AI and all that fun stuff. So I'm excited to dig in today.
So for people that may not know you, can you just give us a little bit of background in terms of what you do and how you got started? I know that you work closely with Seth Price and you're a key component of BluShark. Can you just give us a little bit of background about how that came about and how you found yourself in this role and what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have kind of a fun story here at BluShark Digital. We actually spun out of a law firm. And so you mentioned Seth Price a second ago. Seth is the managing partner of a law firm, Price Benowitz, here in DC, Maryland, Virginia. That's where BluShark is now based as well. But 15, you're right, years now, right? 15, 20 years ago, Price Benowitz, the law firm, started out as two guys at a dining table. That was Dave Benowitz and Seth Price. And they actually started the law firm with criminal law only. They've now grown. They were able to move from 2 to 40 lawyers in about 10 years, leveraging digital. So Seth very much took on the role of entrepreneur, wanted to figure out how can we grow this business. And he really relied on kind of creating office locations around DC, Maryland, Virginia. How can I take a little bit of money and make that really stretch for me and really not compete against big giants, but carve out my own space? And after they were able to scale that law firm from 10 to 40 lawyers, Seth said, well, if I could do it for my firm, I probably could do this for firms across the country. And so BluShark Digital was born. He took the 10 of us who were his in-house marketing team, turned us into the company. I was part of that team at Price Benowitz. So we're celebrating a little over 10 years now as BluShark, as their own company. And what we do is we basically are helping law firms across the country try to stand out online, find a different way, an additional way to get clients in the door, right? To show what they're worth, why they're great, why they're a good fit. And so we do that for a number of practice areas. But as I mentioned, we started with Price Benowitz, which was rooted in criminal. So I think we've spent a lot of time over the years. We've got about 400 law firms we work with. A good portion of them are criminal in particular. And not every practice area is run the same, right? There's different tips. There's different tricks for every single practice area, understanding that the clientele is different, that the way you run your business is different, right? If you are contingency versus an upfront fee, that all makes a big difference in how you build your business. So we kind of help law firms across the board stand out online. And right now, as I mentioned, what worked for you maybe 10 years ago is changing, and it might still work in some elements, but there's all this new stuff with AI. So excited to break that down a little bit. And my favorite, as you've mentioned, is learning this stuff and talking about it. We speak at about 30 legal conferences a year. And what I constantly hear and what I like to hear is that people say, wow, you talk about this in a way I can actually understand it. And I can go home with 1 or 2 tips here, and I can actually do that for myself, right? I can see that SEO is real. I can see that this is not black magic, and I can believe in it and understand that it can help me build my business. So hopefully we'll get into some of that today too.
Yeah, I hope so. It's an interesting origin story because, you guys started out basically working for your own company, working for your own law firm. And then because you're not going to do something for yourself that doesn't work, right? So you're honing that in, trying to grow that particular law firm, and then as you grow bigger, you realize that you've got something that you can offer to other people in other markets, and so that's really interesting. In terms of digital marketing for criminal defense lawyers, and I would hope that anybody listening to this would understand what digital marketing is. Can you just briefly explain what digital marketing is versus marketing in general?
Yeah, no, great start. So digital marketing can mean a couple of different things. People immediately think of paid ads when they think of digital marketing, right? So I pay Google and I'll show up at the top with some words, right? In the last 5-ish years or a little bit more, people have understood those paid ads to be local service ads, which kind of look like a Google business profile, but it's still a pay to play. Digital marketing does consist of paid ads, but it goes much further. It's not just that one column, right? Digital has to do with your website and making you show up on search engines, not just Google anymore, on AI platforms like ChatGPT and things like that, right? But it is the idea of what can you do with your website in the coding on the back end of it, in the content that you put on your website, in the different companies and other websites that talk about you, your press, your branding, right? All of those authoritative backlinks to your website. And then your GBP, your Google business profile. How much information are you putting there? Are you getting reviews? Are you getting consumers to talk about you in a positive way so that the Google and other search engines can say, oh yeah, this is a good business? All of that is included in digital marketing, right? So there's the paid, and then everything I just talked about is what we call organic digital marketing, SEO, search engine optimization. Anything that touches your website is part of that algorithm.
I remember, because I've been a lawyer for a long time, and pre-websites, when I was practicing to begin with, that was back in the days of the Yellow Pages and things like that, no internet. But today, it's not possible to have a law firm. It's not possible to have a criminal defense law firm and not have some digital footprint. I can't imagine if I were a criminal defense lawyer and I didn't have a website and I didn't have a Google business page. I just can't imagine that I could even be in business, right?
Yeah, that's for every single practice area too, not just criminal. But I'll tell you what, I will say that with criminal law firms in particular, even if you didn't have a website created, someone's going to go to Yelp and talk about you. Someone's going to find a way to put up a testimonial on a Facebook page, right? And you're going to have a digital presence, whether you curated it or not, just by the nature of sometimes the clientele in criminal, right? So I would say that even if you're not absolutely making a digital presence for you, you've got a digital footprint, and you have to fight back with those things too. And you're absolutely correct, unless you're trying to have a small mom and pop, tiny market business where it's word of mouth, it's not enough to sustain a law firm, much less grow it, right, in the criminal space.
I think it's just so essential now that because it's validation. It's the same thing that people told me for years about social media, that it's not that it's going to get you business, but people expect you to have it. So even if somebody was referring somebody, even in a niche practice, but then they go to, quote, look you up, and you don't have a website and you don't look a certain way, it just seems like they would dismiss you as just not being credible or valid, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So in terms of the digital marketing, and you work with probably hundreds of law firms, certainly over the years, maybe thousands, I don't know. What are some of the mistakes that you see lawyers, and specifically criminal defense lawyers, make in terms of digital marketing? What do you see that lawyers are doing incorrectly that they should know to do in a different way that would work better to grow their law firms?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind that are like my 3. If you're going to invest in digital marketing, make sure you're closing the loop, right? Or else you're not getting any value. So one would be people who are investing in digital, but they're just being sold shiny objects and they're not putting enough budget into it. They're not being realistic with how long it might take or how much it might take in their market, right? So if some salesperson is promising you the world to win Fort Lauderdale criminal lawyer and that you're going to get cases all throughout Fort Lauderdale, this giant market with hundreds of criminal law firms for $2,500 a month, that's not realistic. I understand that lawyers don't know what that market value is. They don't understand in like quickly what can $2,500 buy me, right? I know how much it costs to create a page of content. I know how much it costs to get a very simple backlink or a Forbes.com backlink. And I will tell you, a Forbes backlink is $5,000 alone. So one good backlink is already out of that budget. I know how many pages, and that helps me to understand and give ranges for people. But unfortunately, if a law firm owner goes and does one sales call, they're not going to have a point of reference. They're not going to know how much they should be spending, right? If you go into a sales call, my biggest advice is when you're talking to these folks, make sure they're showing you the competition, make sure they're breaking down what deliverables you're getting for that, and make sure they're showing it in relation to your competition. Your competition is doing this, and so you need to do a little bit more. Here's how much your competition spends, which means you have to spend this. And if you're going to spend a fourth of what your competition is spending, common sense says you're not going to outdo them, right? So if you're going to spend, make sure you're spending the right amount for your market. It changes by market because you have less competitors in Kansas than you do Fort Lauderdale, right? So one, make sure you're making smart decisions from the beginning, because otherwise you're throwing away $2,500 a month that could be spent on referral marketing, that could be spent on some other business generation marketing bucket, right? Number two, if you line with someone, you like their, the process, the sales process was great. They actually explained what you needed and you're willing to invest that. Understand the timeline. It's not going to happen overnight with digital, right? Digital is going to take 6 months, 8 months, sometimes 12 months if the market is really competitive. You have to have another funnel, another way of generating business to keep the lights on until that digital hits. Once you're ranking, once you have the review count, once people are converting and calling you and the phones are ringing, it's an uphill swing from there, right? Things get better and better. But there is that ramp up period that you have to understand, that you're not just paying and all of a sudden you will have a bunch of leads. And the third is tracking. Let's say you get to that step, you love your company, you hit the 8-month mark, your calls are coming in, things are wonderful, right? How do you continue to grow? How do you not just stay there and maintain? If you are wanting to be aggressive, if you want to continue to grow your revenue, you have to look at data. So you need to make sure now that your company is feeding you with data, telling you exactly where the calls are coming from, telling you in data points, is this quality calls? What's your next step? How do you grow? How do you make sure that you continue to leverage what you're spending in the right way? Because now your site's better, right? You don't need to be doing what you did for that past year. You need a new plan. And so you need a partner that grows with you and provides that information. If you have failed on any of those three, you're not going to see consistent growth.
When you talk about getting the traction and you talk about the spend, now you're talking about the spend to create, organic or map-based search engine optimization, right? You're not talking about Google ads. That's a different conversation. So when you talk about $2,500 is not a big enough spend, are you talking about what I'll just call organic search, which it could include the maps, but you're talking about that versus pay-to-play paid ads, right?
Yes, and good distinction, because the other two, number 2 and number 3, are also about organic. If you were to do paid ads with a good budget, then you could see leads coming in within weeks, within a month, right? It is much quicker. It's, hey, I pay to play, I pay, I show, I get calls. With organic, that's the one that I'm saying, yes, will take some time for Google or the search engines to learn about you and understand you're the best person in the market to show. When I talk about budget, though, it still is, $2,500 does not go a long way with paid ads either, unless you're in a super non-competitive market, right? What BluShark traditionally, right now with what we're seeing with everything in spend and competitors and markets, is that you need about $5,000 minimum to spend if you're going to do local service ads or pay-per-click ads right now. So anything under that, really the engine you're using, the platform that you're paying to, is going to say, you know what, John Smith down the road is willing to pay more for that keyword, so I'm going to show them. So if you don't have a healthy enough budget, even in paid, you don't show, right? And then you're never going to be able to actually spend it. Because with paid, the idea is you only pay per click when somebody actually engages, or LSAs are pay per call. You can set your budget to $3,000 a month, but if Google chooses not to show you at all because you're not putting forth enough of a high enough bid for that space, you may not spend anything at all and you're not going to see any leads.
In terms of that, one of the things is that as this thing has grown with the Google, Google ads and those kind of things, and now apparently even going to start seeing it with Chat GPT, but it is extremely frustrating because when I started doing this early on, I was told by the person I was working with back then that once he got me to quote, the top spot or the top two spots, that once I got there, then I could live there. And as long as I kept doing the things that I needed to do, I would have that spot. And so that happened, and certainly in Myrtle Beach, where I've been forever anyway. So I got a little bit of a head start because I was already there when these things started developing. So, but then what happens, and this is the frustration I hear from the criminal defense lawyers that I talk to throughout, is that quote, number one on Google used to be an organic spot, then it became a map spot, and then it becomes a sponsored ad in the map. Then it becomes above that, the pay-per-click. Then it comes above that is the LSAs, the local service ads. So the whole top of the search is people paying. So how important is it to have that, have that ranking, which I'll just call, organic, but I'm really talking about organic in the maps. How important is that ranking? Because it seems like whoever just throws the most money Google's way, they're going to be in those top spots. And I'm not sure that people looking for lawyers or people on the internet even actually understand that those are paid ads. I'm not sure that they even get that. So can you talk about that a little bit in terms of the value of the non-sponsored, the non-paid spots that you help lawyers get to?
Yeah, and you know what? I think that was really important. You talked about the history of it because there is such this concept that I've talked about with AI now. History repeats itself of that competitive early advantage, right? So if you get in early, like you said, before there was the local 3-pack or before there was the local service ads, you could get in there was less competition, right? And you could be showing and you could be winning from that, getting calls and cases. That's where we are right now with AI as well. And you're correct. In a year from now, there's going to be more ads, there's going to be more things and distractions, right? So it's that much more important to get in right now while it's less competitive. The way that Google has gone, as you're saying, is true. And that's why oftentimes in competitive markets, you need to be investing in both buckets, right? You want to be seen as the firm, as the brand that is in the local service ads at the top, that is then in the local 3-pack. And right under the local 3-pack, you're also in that top organic spot. The more that the eyes see that same brand and that same name in all of those pieces on a scroll, the more likely they are to convert with you because they're like, oh, these people are all over the place, right? Now, the other thing that I say, though, is doing just paid ads puts you at the top, but it allows consumers to know you've paid to earn your way there. It's not necessarily that you've earned your way organically because you are the best option, right? So some consumers we still see kind of understand the pay-per-click where it's just the words, right? It's just an ad with words. They don't really like the sponsored ads because they're saying that these people are just paying their way to the top. They're not necessarily showing me their reviews or any of that stuff, right? The local service ads is where Google got really smart because consumers understand it's paid, but you do get to engage with the review count and you do get to see what other people say about it. You can click in and learn about the business, right? It's very special, it's very different, and it is still giving law firms, especially criminal law firms, their lowest, cheapest cost per case sign. So don't sleep on local service ads. They are very important. They're at the top. They mimic organic, and so people trust them. But you still have value in some searches don't pop up a local service ad, right? Some key terms, if people are asking questions, sometimes you will not see the ads. And so the thing at the top of the page then is the Google local 3-pack, which is the organic. And so you want to still be able to show for all those types of searches at the very top. The other thing we're talking about is kind of the old page one of Google, right? Now with Google Gemini and Gemini AIOs and Gemini AI mode, you're now starting to see a summary at the top, right? I don't know, Greg, when you've searched, have you noticed that it kind of switched over for a lot of people already? That when you search a question, you're seeing a summary, a paragraph, not necessarily seeing a 3-pack or an ad or a website.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's maybe possibly having some impact on our search results right now because, you get that AI prompt in Google Gemini. And the other thing too is, this idea that people are going to go to the other services like ChatGPT and other places and pay a subscription in order to get a clean search. Really, Google is Google, and people are getting that AI fed to them, and they maybe don't even know what it is, right? But people talk about Google being replaced, but really when I look at it, with that Gemini and their AI platform, they still seem to me like they're the show in town that's running everything.
So a couple of things there, and this is part of where Seth was talking about in his last podcasts and things that he's put out there. Said the fundamentals matter. When you look at the new search result page, and it is that summary, the summary is coming from the content on websites. That's where the answer is coming from. It's organic. So now at the very top of Google, it's no longer those ads, but it is an AIO, an AI overview, right? So now here we come back full circle to the fundamentals, the content on your website, the technical on your website is mattering very much to be the person that's actually featured there at the top, right? And then there's little ways that they can click buttons and they can go to your site or they can learn more about you, right? Because it's a much more interactive experience. When you scroll from there, the AIOs now have a local 3-pack in it. So the summary, if you're looking for a service, if you're saying I need pizza or I need a nail salon, right? Something, an actual service, I need a lawyer. A lot of times you're not seeing a summary, but you're seeing a 3-pack in that AI overview that's at the top of the page. And the 3-pack there is directly correlated to all of the optimizations you've done to earn a spot in the traditional local 3-pack. Right? So we're kind of seeing this evolution again of where ads are not necessarily at the very top and you have this shot of branding if you're working on your content, you're working on your website, and you're doing all the things you should have been doing for years in that AI overview.
I noticed too, and it's interesting that, with a lot of my search results now when I'm on Google, is it gives me the option to hide the sponsored results. So I have the opportunity to basically turn the ads off. And frequently I do that, certainly when I'm looking for somebody in another jurisdiction. So do you have any idea about the typical person who's searching, what their level of sophistication is in terms of knowing what those ads are? Because over the years I've talked to people and I said, well, that's a paid ad. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads or something. I said, that's sponsored. That's a paid ad. Somebody paid to be there. And they just didn't get it. So are 90% of the people out there searching, they don't know that those are ads? Or do you have any kind of data or feedback regarding that?
I think it's generational. So our older folks who were using the internet when it first came out was figuring this out. Even now, it's your older millennials, I think, at this point, right? Like 40s and 50s. They grew up with the internet, right? But the internet changes so fast. More so, it's that they're annoyed by if it's an ad, right? So if it says ad, which is the pay-per-click, then I can see on mobile them hiding that. It's a lot easier for that age and younger, right? However, local service ads are the ones that I still say they're tricky. They look like the local 3-pack. They look very trusting. You don't recognize that those are ads. And I think that's across all generations. People are trusting of local service ads, paid ads. But the regular pay-per-click ones, I think as you get down to younger generations, they're not people that like the easy way, the paid way, like believe that that's fake, right? They want to make sure that they're using someone that they trust, they like, and that holds up to, the right kind of standards, being not shady, all those types of things. I think our younger generation is very cognizant of making choices and supporting businesses that they trust, right? That are doing the right thing. So I think as you get to where your searchers are right now, they don't like the ads. They like the way to hide it, the PPC ads, the pay-per-click. But I think the local service ads are still perfectly fine. People are not hiding those because they're able to see real reviews, right? They're able to see that information there. I think as long as there's transparency in the people that are paying to be at the top, like the local service ads, it's not getting hidden. People like them, people trust them, people use them. But again, on the AI overviews, they're bringing that in. It's not necessarily peppering that space. That space is still organic right now. And then furthermore, that's just the AI platform for Google, but you've got ChatGPT, you've got Perplexity, you've got Claude, some of these other AI platforms right now. And the huge headline, you said it earlier, you said you feel like Google seems to be the golden standard still. People are still going to Gemini, right? Across the board with Perplexity and ChatGPT, they're now starting to have local search results, and they are 100% currently pulling from the Google local 3-pack. They did not reinvent the wheel to create a whole map, right? Google has that map, and they're pulling. If you're ranking in the Google 3-pack, you are showing essentially in ChatGPT or Perplexity if you're doing a couple of additional elements of optimization. So focusing on that 3-pack in Google will help catapult you into the search results for local in AI platforms as well right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's, I was talking to somebody or listening to something the other day, and they were talking about chat, and it could have been Chat GPT, it could have been Claude, it could have been Grok or whatever. It could have been any of them. But they're saying when you're doing that search on chat, it's doing a Google search.
Yep.
And then it's coming back with what it found.
Yep.
And just like what you just said is that, chat is not going to, but they really, they can't, I don't think they can, they have to go out and find the information if they're looking for whatever they're looking for, right? If they're looking for pizza parlors or they're looking for criminal defense lawyers, they have to look at what's out there, right? And it's a Google platform, right? Because we've got the maps, we all did that. And so there's nowhere else to really look, right?
Yeah, Claude AI is the only one that is currently trying to build its own proprietary system of just mentioned places and building information about what's around those places and using your information as a user. So Claude is one where people are paying, and then Claude gets information about you, and then we'll kind of match, okay, well, you like this type of restaurant, so I'll pick this one for you. But even with it being a proprietary platform, the majority of that information is getting picked up by Google Maps, right? That's been around forever. And then the other piece here is you have the AI platform, but every AI platform is powered by a search engine, right? So for example, I think most people know that ChatGPT relies on Microsoft Bing, right? That's the search engine is Bing. And then the AI search platform is called ChatGPT. For Claude AI, their search engine is called Brave. And for Perplexity, their search engine is called Comet, right? So the one that's building its own proprietary maps situation, and they're testing this out, Claude, their search engine platform, Brave, 100% pulls the 3-pack from Google's. So even though the AI platform is trying to work on something, the platform that is powering Claude is still focusing on and leveraging Google as well. So I think for now, for the foreseeable future, I think that's what's going to happen, because I don't understand why would you reinvent the wheel, right? Why would you spend extra money trying to figure this out when you're going to aggregate data and you're going to pull it from a source that's always had it. Doesn't make sense to do that. And Google is always smart, always adjusting. Google is constantly adding pieces to its Google business profile to stay top of mind to these other AI platforms. It's making sure that it keeps its space.
Can you talk a little bit about the reviews? And when I say that, I know there are other reviews, but I'm talking about Google reviews. And I think I'd heard Seth talking recently where he said that a one review for a law firm was worth $1,000. So in other words, if you had 250 reviews, you could expect $250,000 in that year from that review. And so we've been getting reviews for years and have multiple locations where we have an office, in different places in South Carolina. And so, that splits up the reviews. And reviews can be difficult to get sometimes, but at the same time, I see lawyers who have, 700 reviews, 800 reviews, and there's a part of me that makes me distrust that a little bit. Can you talk about the importance of the reviews, and if you have 600 reviews versus 150, the significance of that?
Yeah. So step one is getting visibility in the local 3-pack, right? Doing all the things to your website and everywhere that you need to do so you can just show. But now let's say somebody says, I need a criminal lawyer, a DUI lawyer in Myrtle Beach, right? And you show up, and then 2 other competitors will show up in that 3-pack. It has 3 answers. Let's say your other 2 competitors have 150 reviews and the other person has 180 reviews. Those are very reasonable numbers. They're not crazy spiked numbers. But then you have 45 views because newer Google business profile. The point here is that having the most reviews does not automatically get you into the 3-pack. You can be in the 3-pack with 45 reviews, right? If you're doing everything else right, if you're consistently getting reviews. But is anyone going to press the call button for the person that is in that 3-pack with 45 reviews? Or are they going to likely go with the person that has 180 or 160? Conversion matters, right? What's the point of showing up in the 3-pack if you're not getting the phone calls and getting the cases signed? This is the most important reason why your review count has to be at a certain number. There's no magical number where we say, oh, everybody's supposed to have at least 100. It matters with your competitors. Again, always comparing yourself to the competitors in your particular market to know what you need to do. It's a rat race within your market. So if you're in a small market and the people in the 3-pack right now only have 20, 45, and 50 reviews, you only need 60 reviews to dominate, right? Also, they're going to get reviews as you get reviews, so maybe a little heightened. But the point is you need to outdo your competition in terms of the number. That should be your goal. Now, how do you get that, right? A lot of people, and this for criminal lawyers, I think family as well, sometimes will have the challenge of maybe you did help somebody, but do they really want to air their dirty laundry? Do they really want to put their name publicly saying you helped them get off of a criminal charge, right? It's a little bit trickier. And so there's ways that they can try to still give you the star rating. They can leave a very generic message, but their name is still kind of tied there. And so there is a challenge that I often find with criminal lawyers in getting high number of reviews. If you see a criminal law firm with a Google business profile and they have a ton of reviews, and you know they don't necessarily have a ton of business because it's a smaller market, then yes, that's a red flag. It's like, okay, these are fake, right? Half of these are fake. And a consumer will see that very easily. So when they're looking at that 3-pack and they see some crazy astronomical number, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing sometimes. Sometimes it can be negative. But again, that's if it's a small town. If it's a Houston law firm, then you're expected to maybe have more clients and have more review count there. The other thing that's weird and kind of gives red flags is a 5.0 where every single review on your Google business profile is a 5.0. There's got to be someone who was unhappy with you, right? Like when you're looking up a restaurant, you're looking up anything. Usually I'll actually go to the negative reviews first to see what's the worst thing somebody said about this place more than I go and look at the 5 stars. So you want to be careful not to fake it so hard that there's only five O's there. You don't look real and genuine. You want a couple in there that are fours, threes, maybe even a one, as long as it's not saying something terrible, right, about you. Sometimes having that 4-9 makes you more relatable and more real, quite frankly. So I agree with you. You don't need to spike it. You don't want to look unrealistic. You don't want the five O's because it turns people off. But you do need to have a competitive number in that 3-pack in order to convert.
Well, is that just me and you talking, or do other people look at it that way? Because just exactly what you said, I couldn't agree more, is when I look at somebody and I said, okay, you got 450, you got 500 reviews, and they're all 5 stars. A woman that works for me, my firm administrator, we were talking about the reviews because I'm always stressing them, and I'm never happy because we never have enough. And so always looking for ways to get more reviews. And so she asked me, now this is a woman who does bookkeeping. This is a woman who keeps the books. Her life is numbers. And she says, what do we have to do to get to 5 stars? And I said, we can never get to 5 stars because it's math. If we have one that's less than 5 stars, for the rest of our lives, no matter how many we get, we will never have 5 stars. So she's looking at me perplexed. And I go, how do you not understand this? You're all you do is work in numbers. It's an equation, okay? So in terms of 5 stars, it just makes me distrust the person. It makes me distrust the law firm. And so I'm curious, though, if is that just me, or do other people see that? Because if we get a negative review, it just proves that we're real. We made a mistake. Or sometimes we didn't make a mistake. We had an F client or somebody that was just unbearable. But I'm not afraid of the bad reviews. I don't want them. But at the same time, I just think that's part of life.
I don't think it's just me and you. I do poll audiences a lot of the times about how many look at reviews. Do you look at the negatives? What do you think when you see like too many positives? And it is human nature that people and law firms agree too that, some are happy if they have a 5.0, but they're like, yeah, I realize it does make me look a little bit like it's not real, especially if they have a lot of reviews. They can admit that. I think there's definitely a consensus that people.
And I think the negative reviews are helpful too. Like if you use the example of a restaurant, and I'm looking at a restaurant and I say, okay, I'm going to go to these negative reviews. And then they talk about the restaurant and they say, it was too expensive. They didn't say, they said it was great service, great food, fantastic environment. Everything about it was terrific. It was just too expensive. So that tells me a lot. It was just too expensive for them.
Yeah. Right.
That's not necessarily a negative. The other thing I do is I look at them and I say, well, okay, how old was that? Because they may say something like, it was from 2 years ago. They had a couple string but then since then they got good reviews. So I'm thinking, well, it's a business. They had problems. It looks to me like they straightened it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it also gives you an opportunity to see the responses. So I think there's a lot to responses to negative reviews as well. If you get a negative review, you can really shine as a business owner and as a business if you respond in a very healthy, positive way, right? Because what you're doing is you're saying, well, yeah, a consumer says, oh, they had a bad experience. But look, this person tried to fix it. They felt bad about it. That's who I want to work with. I'm not crazy enough to think that everyone's going to be perfect, but I want someone that's going to work on it with me if something comes up, right? So a lot of times when you look at a restaurant too and they respond and they're like, or you see the time frame that it gets fixed, I think that goes a long way too. So I don't sleep on firms responding to reviews, positive and negative. It shows that you're engaging with your clients, right? And your folks.
So I want to pivot here just a little bit. Nalini, as you know, you and some other people, experts on artificial intelligence and search and other issues, are planning to come to our AI on the Edge for criminal defense lawyers, which is going to be September 19th and 20th in Key West, Florida. And there we'll be doing a deep dive on AI specifically for criminal defense lawyers and how that can be used to help them stay ahead of technology, make sure they're not getting left behind. Can you just give us just a brief kind of peek into what you can do and what you can be talking about that specifically would help criminal defense lawyers from a perspective of using artificial intelligence to improve their law firms. Can you speak to that just briefly?
Yeah, and what I bring to the table is going to be, how do you optimize to get yourself in front of people who are using AI search, right? How do you get a second channel or second bite at the apple to actually have visibility, where some people might be asking questions or looking for firms and looking for your services? How do you generate more business with that piece? Less so on, well, what AI tools do you use internally to help your business grow that way? But we have had spent about 2.5 years on case studies, learning what works and doesn't work on ChatGPT, Perplexity, those types of AI platforms. And we boiled it down to, these are the 5 things that we see consistently work. We have these case studies that show the clients we tested it on and how they're showing up, and what particularly Google or ChatGPT says is why you're showing up, right? It'll say because they've had great results, or because they have great testimonials, or whatever it is. But it's results. It's showing that you actually are consistently helping clients and getting a verdict, or getting a settlement. If you're PI, it's results for you guys. Awards and recognitions, testimonials, consistently getting reviews so that it shows that your business is active. Lawyer profiles are a big deal, where you can show engagement from consumers on there and your wins and who you are. And then press and authority, so positive press that you're getting. What I really like about the way you guys have structured this event that you're going to have is that it's not just talk at people, but the component where it's a workshop and you can really dig in. It's not me saying, hey guys, go do this at home. I can sit there, and if I think the one that I'd like to work on, maybe lawyer profiles, walk everybody through how to create your AVO and optimize it, right? Your AVO profile, here's what you need to do with it. Let's do this in real time. Let's get it set up. It doesn't take that long, right? But it's very important for AI search. So kind of really sitting there, walking them through one of these 5 things that they can actually make a difference for their firm in AI search. I'm going to try to focus on one of them and walk them through, and have everybody they have their computer, or even just step by step, here's what I got to do.
So this would be a criminal defense lawyer who's interested in this and learning how to do it. They can come to the event. They can bring their computer, bring their laptop. They can sit down in a room with you, and you're explaining to them, this is what you need to do. And they can be learning how to do that, and possibly even doing it in real time. So they're getting real value, hands-on expert advice, and basically coaching and helping how to specifically accomplish that while they're at the event. Is that what you're saying?
100%. And that's, again, why I say I love what you're structuring, because I have to always say from the stage, I'm giving all this information. I'm going to give you the deck. Please share it with your marketing team. Please go home and do it. You got to start somewhere, right? But in that room, they'll be able to start, which is very cool.
Well, I want to thank you again for appearing on the podcast. I want to thank you again for agreeing to come to our AI on the Edge event in Key West, Florida, September 19th and 20th, where lawyers can come, and you're going to do a deep dive. We're going to have a deep dive and have leading experts, including Nalini and other people who are going to be there to show criminal defense lawyers exactly what they need to do, what they can do in AI to improve their firms. I want to thank you again, Nalini. If you're interested in growing your criminal defense law firm and staying on the front of this technology, then you don't want to miss our AI on the Edge event. If you want to grow and you're serious about it and you have a criminal defense law firm, this is only for criminal defense law firms. We only help criminal defense law firms. It's only people there are criminal defense law firms, and we'll have our AI experts like Nalini there. If you're interested in growing and you want a hands-on help, actionable help, not just speeches, not just people talking at you, register on the link below. We'll see you in Key West, September 19th and 20th. Thank you.
If you want to know more, go to prosperitlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.